So it doesn't matter who you think you are. When you're talking to a 16-year-old about David and Goliath, it's about him finding his identity in who God created him to be. And that connects more with a 16, 17-year-old, especially now when, there's so many questions about who they are and what they're doing and where they're going next in life. So eventually they're going to stop being curious. And I think what it's taught me is that we have to stop ignoring curiosity and we have to start feeding it.
A lot of professionals out there that are adults, they hold their work close until they feel like it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not leading with curiosity, and they're not going to people early and saying, look at this feedback.
Right.
They're not okay with playing the fool. Episode that we did where it wasn't until a mentor told me, we're not striving for an A+ here, we just need a B+, because the A will come after multiple iterations. And
right.
So I connected that with this TED Talk of just there's this theme here of getting feedback early, being curious, and being okay with playing the fool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what's going to make you better.
How do I help this person and ignore what I'm feeling just for a few minutes?
Yeah. So having that mindset is really key. And I hear a lot of leaders across different companies I work for. And I listen to a lot of leadership podcasts, and it's always the servant leader, having that mindset. It's not about you. It's not about your growth and development. I mean, there's a place for that, but you're in a leadership role as with the purpose of serving your team. Welcome everyone to the Learning Playground. This is a podcast where we explore how learning happens in the wild, where learning is messy, where it gets creative, but most importantly, where it gets human. And I'm really excited to have today's guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jeremiah Pleitez. I'm a children's minister at my church. It's awesome to have to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited about the conversation today because it's really going to explore kind of a different side of learning that we don't often talk about, especially in the corporate world, where it revolves around this idea of spirituality, community, and how all of that helps influence how people learn and process information. So really excited to have you here today. But maybe we can start with just learning a little bit about what drew you into being a youth minister. What was that inspiration for you, or that moment where you said, this is what I'm meant to do?
It's kind of funny because it wasn't what I wanted to do at all. My wife was, she was volunteering at our church, and she was in the children's ministry, and I was outside yelling at people. I like to greet people and be one-on-one, but there was an opportunity for me to come and help, and that's what I love to do. So I started helping, and this was around the same time that I was in seminary. So I was doing a lot. I was helping with the children's ministry, and then there was an opportunity that opened up for me to help on a much deeper level. So I did. And after about a year or two, I ended up becoming the children's minister. And at first I was like, okay, is this where God wants me? And now I've really come to love what I do, because I've learned that it's not just about teaching God's word. It's about helping transform the next generation and helping children learn about God. But at the same time, it really taught me a lot about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you mentioned that I know this because, we've known each other for obviously our entire lives.
Right.
We're family, by the way.
Yeah.
But I thought this would be an interesting conversation, but really curious to hear about your education in this space, that process. I know you went to university for this, and it's probably a completely different experience than the way maybe I learned about learning design. What was that university experience like for you?
Yeah. So, we use the same things, it was Bible college, and then I ended up getting my master's in pastoral leadership. So I think it was different in that there's definitely some right or wrong answers, but it's not 1 + 1 = 2, right? Especially in religion, and you talk about Christianity, there's one thing that is right, and then there's other things that aren't really important, but still create a lot of debate. So I think learning in religion is really different in that you kind of have to be careful how you learn, and you kind of have to, be careful which way you go.
In what way?
For instance, right? And I'm just going to speak on me as a Christian. we believe in the triune God, right? And there's other religions that believe that Jesus wasn't the Son of God. So for me, those things can become a little dangerous, because it's like, okay, there's a right and a wrong way to everyone, right? But more specifically to me, there's a right and a wrong way. And if I start teaching that wrong way, my Bible says that you account for that. Those who teach really need to be careful, because if you teach something wrong, you're held accountable for it. Whereas if I'm teaching kids, we grew up learning that your blood was blue, right? And it's like, oh, no, we were wrong about that. No worries. Just scratch it. We're going to fix it. And it is what it is. But in religion, I mean, it could make or break the way someone sees it for the rest of their life.
There's this like, this correlation between like what you just said and what happens in this like the corporate space, like maybe not at the so the accountability piece. It's like when we create learning experiences and our goal is to help an employee or a team member like do the best work that they can and bring their best selves to work and upskill and do all the things that are going to help drive their career and create business impact. And if it doesn't, then we're held accountable, not at the higher power level.
Right.
There's like, stronger influence there, but at the business level. So I can relate to that in a way. And so I'm curious though, so you got into youth ministry, knowing you for as long as I have, like that just seems like a natural fit, because you're always so great with kids and your energy is always like, even with my daughters, you're just, they're excited to see you, even, whether it's like 3 months apart, a year apart, doesn't matter. They're excited to see you because they know what kind of energy you bring. Curious how that translates to the space where you teach and you interact with youth, and how they influence how you teach as well.
You're right. I mean, it's funny because parents are always like, oh, you were made to do this. I go above and beyond. I mean, for Thanksgiving, I wore a turkey blow up outfit. And it's just, we have crazy hair day. I'll spike my hair, whatever the theme is for that week. I'll do it with the children. And I think, teaching in religion is very personal, right? And I feel that I've been blessed with that gift to just be personal, and I may not remember your name, but I'm going to remember you telling me that, you had a test this week, or that something was going on in your life. And I think that really helps me to connect with the children.
Yeah. And it kind of creates this kind of like fun, probably safe space for them to be able to like bring themselves into that environment.
Yeah,
and
for
really
sure.
Just like immerse themselves in that learning, which is really, really great. And I know like with our church, my kids enjoy the youth programs.
Yeah.
Like they are asking to like always go back, or are we going to church and things like that? Because it does like bring I feel like it brings like this different element to a child's life, because it's not like typical school, right? Like they're used to in like public school system, which is great. It serves a purpose. This is like something completely different. And honestly, like we don't talk about God and Christianity like every day in our household. So maybe it's like something novel to them, something new. And it's like, oh, I really want to learn about like this my spirituality. And they don't use these words, but I feel like there's like some sort of like unknown connection there for them, where they feel like there's something there they want to explore. And it's really cool to see that.
And it's funny you say that, because if you study like how Christianity in general has happened, so there was a period in time where a lot of people were not going to church anymore. They were pulling away. And I think especially since COVID happened, it really made people look at themselves, look at life, you had to slow down for a second. And now a lot of people are asking like, what else is out there? Like there's gotta be, all this has gotta be for something.
Yeah.
And it has sparked a lot of curiosity, especially in children and young adults.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's great. Now we have to grew up in a society where we were told do this. And it's like, well, why? Because I said so. But this generation isn't like that.
Right.
This generation isn't because I said so. So when your kids are curious, especially about, spirituality, about Christ, you can't put it on pause, and you can't say just because that's what it is. You really need to dig deeper, because if not, they lose interest so fast.
Oh, yeah.
They lose interest so fast with everything going on in the world. It's crazy. So
It
Yeah.
is. It is a challenge. I find that with my kids, just like trying to get them to focus on one thing at a time. And then just like the educator or the learning designer in me is like, well, this is me trying to teach them the way that I've always been taught, and so like how much of that is true anymore, and how much do I need to adapt as like in the education space, even with my own kids, just
Yeah.
like being a bit more open and receptive to how they like to do things. And obviously there's constraints because you're not trying to like raise psychopaths, but so
Yeah.
it's just like, where are the guardrails, where like what's, I guess I use this phrase in at work, like what's fixed, what's flexible, and what's free. So kind of setting those boundaries for them and reinventing that all the time is something that is important in the work that I do, but I'm seeing like the value of having that mindset as a parent as well.
Yeah, and it's crazy. So I just got back from a conference not that long ago, and one of the things they were talking about is the rate at which things change in generations. So like in the 50s, there would be fads that would last 15, 20 years. As you get closer and closer to where we are now, that time got shorter and shorter. When we grew up, it was like 5 years. Things would change every 5 years. Now it's every 18 hours. So, I mean, because of technology, because of everything happening, trying to teach children, especially about things like religion, you have to be on top of it and you have to learn. I mean, by the time you and I learn about this whole new fad, it's already changed.
Except K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah.
That's been around for
apparently,
like
that
forever,
and
so.
Paw Patrol.
I'm not gonna lie. So I was just talking to somebody about this, like just really quickly indulge my tangent. But so, you get those Spotify raps, I don't know if you have Spotify, but like if you have this music app, it'll aggregate like everything you listen to throughout the year and then tell you like what your top song was, what your top album was. And so mine, of course, my top album was K-pop Demon Hunters soundtrack. And to be honest with you, I can't even blame it on my kids because they have their own Spotify Kids account.
Yeah.
And so they listen to their music that's age appropriate. And so that was all me, bro. That was like,
oh my gosh,
I
that was hilarious.
I was jamming that shit in the car.
I don't even think Emily came over once and they put it on and I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I want to go back to something you said about like personalizing or personalization. You mentioned that phrase. So that's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, a lot of time researching, is personalization and learning. And just curious for like in your interactions with like, I'm not really sure how it's set up within your church, but if it's like a classroom format or something like that, how do you think about tailoring your teaching to different age ranges? Because like you're not getting just like only third graders, right?
No.
You're getting a range of ages. And so how do you think about?
So we have a few different programs. So we have a room set up for the babies, right? Babies and toddlers. So 6 weeks to 2 years old. Then we have a classroom for 3 and 4 year olds. Then we have a classroom for 5 to 7, and then second grade through 5th grade. And then it starts getting into what we call rush. And that is for teens. So 6th grade through 12th grade. So the way I teach a 3-year-old obviously is nothing like I teach a 16-year-old. So when I think about these things, you think about, okay, I'm teaching a child who's 5 years old about David and Goliath. What does that look like? For a 5-year-old, that's a young boy who is fighting this giant, and it's about, trusting in God and knowing that he's got your back even when you face these big giants in life. Now, for a 16-year-old, which David, when he fought Goliath, historically, he was around 17 years old. So now that story to a 16-year-old is David figuring out his identity and who God created him to be, because he grew up as a shepherd boy, right? And not even just a shepherd boy. They left him out. He wasn't even considered as someone who was going to be the next king. They left him out in the field. And then this prophet Samuel comes and tells him, no, God chose him. So it doesn't matter who you think you are. When you're talking to a 16-year-old about David and Goliath, it's about him finding his identity in who God created him to be. And that connects more with a 16, 17-year-old, especially now when, there's so many questions about who they are and what they're doing and where they're going next in life. So it's really personal. It's really personal. I'm going to tell you a story.
Yeah. Indulge.
There was I had this child, and he was about 9 years old. And he comes in and he was having trouble. He just was I don't like saying children are bad. He just wouldn't listen. right? One week I go in there. So when children aren't listening, they call Big Papa in. And I go in there and I talk to the children one week and I say, hey, I really need you to pay attention because the other kids aren't able to learn when you're acting out. And I said, if it happens again, I'm gonna have to call your mom. I'm sorry. But next week he comes in and they call me again. And I walk in the classroom and he's like, just call my mom. I said, what? He said, you said last week that if I act out again, you're going to call my mom. Just call my mom. So I'm like, okay, let me pull you outside. I get one of the other leaders and I'm talking to him in the hallway and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I just don't feel like being here. I'm like, okay, why? What's up? And he starts telling me, this 9-year-old boy, he starts telling me all the things that's going on, right? The kids will just talk.
Yeah.
And he's telling me about how, he gets in trouble at school and he's just used to it. And I'm like, why? What's the issue? And it turns out this kid's actually really smart. He's just been put in a really bad situation. He's, and comes from poverty and it is what it is. And this kid, he just thinks that everyone's out to get him. And it was just like a moment. I call it Spirit of God. And I looked at this boy and I said, hey, I want you to know something. I want you to know that I love you. And he just stops and he looks at me and he says, why? You don't even know who I am. And I said, that's the beauty of being a Christian, is that I don't need to know everything about you, but I do know that I need to love you. And I know that God loves you. And I know that sometimes you may not understand what's happening or you don't really agree with it, but we do these things and we act right. And you're a smart kid. You don't need to be this way because you want attention.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't even know where it came from. And I asked him if I could pray for him and I did. And after class, he went, his mom picked him up and he ran to me in the hallway and he gave me a hug and he's like, thank you for praying for me, Mr. Jeremiah. And dude, it took everything in me to not cry. It's moments like that, and it's happened time and time again where you have to connect with these kids. And a month later, they called me back in the classroom and I'm like, what's going on today? He's like, I just wanted to talk to you. I said, you don't have to act out for me to talk to you, bro. You just call me. We can talk. It's all right. So it's moments like that.
Yeah.
That's
it. I mean, that's a really powerful story. And, as you're talking about like telling this child that you love them, even though you didn't know them, it made me think about some of the practices in the work that I do. So like the company I work for, we have this thing where we say, fall in love with the customer problem.
Right.
Like above everything else, if you fall in love with the customer problem and just follow that, then it'll lead you to the right place. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like, I'm not equating it to like the emotion,
I get it.
But it's just like, so when I think about it in like the field of education, the field of learning design, it's just like, I think I may have even heard Bezos say this before. It's just like fall in love with the customer problem, really understand why, like the why, like systemically what's happening, and use that to shape an approach, right? To take like, and then like, it's really amazing the power of that, because then you start to see a shift in that employee, like maybe a lot of times, like in the corporate space, we can discount employees, say, oh, they're not hitting their mark or whatever. But it's because a lot of times I see or I hear about in corporate education, people like standardizing learning, like we as a field typically do pretty good with hiring for diversity. I mean, that's like meaning like not necessarily just like race and ethnicity, but like neurodivergence and things like that, making sure that we're have like a collective voice we're bringing into the innovation. And it's really important for a lot of companies. But what I see in corporate education, we like as practitioners, we don't always do a good job about like teaching to like what that specific employee's needs are, whether it be like the pace of learning or whatever. Like we're just saying like, here's an e-learning module, go for it, have at it. Like, but then you measure everyone and expect the same outcome. Like everyone should be, but it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
Like this is a great example of how like just falling in love with the why, falling in love with like, wasn't your customer, but he was part of your congregation.
Right.
Just falling in love with that person in a way that you're showing empathy and you're
Mm.
showing curiosity to help
Right.
them.
Right.
And then you see that shift. I mean, it's just like they say, it like all the good things come after that. So really powerful story. It's a really good insight and a good reminder to like always lead with the curiosity
Yeah, for
and
sure.
empathy. And
For sure.
so I want to talk a bit about, you were telling the story about David and Goliath and like these different age groups. Curious how the differences between like, so I would imagine like in a kid's mind, like a kid being like my kid's age of like, say my daughter Juliet, she's in first grade.
Mhm.
Like this is a story that maybe she hasn't heard before. And it just seems like so like out there, maybe,
Right.
you know, like how does that curiosity and that willingness to accept what may or may not be true from a kid, how does that impact like what you do? How does that shape, or
So,
how does that taught you things about curiosity?
yeah, so when you think about a young child's curiosity, I mean, it's taught me a lot because their curiosity is genuine, right? And we're talking about the same kids that believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, so it's like, okay, if they can believe in those things, we can't say, oh, David and Goliath, it sounds like a crazy story, considering where their thought process is at, right? So depending on how old the child is will determine their level of, which obviously you understand this. And the same thing goes for religion, when I'm talking to these kids and they're asking me questions about, oh, well, how big was Goliath? And how come giants aren't around? We have to start, especially like I said earlier, with this generation, being able to answer those questions. And if not answering them right there, giving them an answer the next time you see them, because these children remember a lot. And if you tell them, hey, I'll give you an answer next week, they're going to come up to you in the hallway and say, did you find the answer yet, Mr. Jeremiah? And if you don't, eventually they're going to stop being curious. And I think what it's taught me is that we have to stop ignoring curiosity and we have to start feeding it.
Yeah.
Because if a child no longer becomes curious about Christ, then that's going to lead to them not wanting to be in church, not wanting to learn, period, about God or whatever the situation is. I mean, if a child is curious about math, you're not going to tell them, I don't want you to know about that. Right. You want to feed into it. And same thing goes for adults. Like I said earlier, we've gotten so used to just accepting the answer. But when you kill the curiosity, it also kills their motivation.
Yeah.
So for me, that curiosity has taught me a lot about how I need to approach religion in general, but how I approach Christ. So in Matthew 18 verse 3, it talks about how we need to, as I'm paraphrasing here, essentially, we need to be like children in order to enter the kingdom of God. And I didn't understand that until I started teaching in ministry, because I was like, oh, okay, you need a childlike mentality. No. Children, when they ask questions, they really want to know.
Yeah.
It's not that they're questioning anything. They want to know more because they don't understand. And as an adult, when someone questions something, a lot of times we get offended. It's like, why are you questioning it? Well, because we don't understand. So when you go into something with a childlike curiosity, you're really trying to go deeper. And I think that we have to learn that that's why there's so many videos. That's why there's so many things out there right now, because people want to know things. And if you don't give them an answer, they're going to find it from someone else and it may not be the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me. So I watched this TED Talk, I mean, probably like 2 years ago, maybe. Maybe it was like during COVID or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it was Ethan Hawke, this actor, Ethan Hawke, did this podcast with the whole concept being around like, you need to be okay being the fool, right? And so it was a really, like, for some reason this message has stuck with me, because he was talking about like children are the most confident artists that you'll ever meet, because like their artwork could look like complete crap to like adult standards, but they just like, they're so proud to show you that, and just like, this is what I made. And they don't, like, they're okay like being the fool in that moment, because they like to none the wiser, right? They don't understand that. And so it made me think about like the curiosity that kids have and how they like just naturally bring that into every interaction, and how that's kind of been like almost, hopefully not physically, but like kind of beaten out of us as we get older, right?
We
So now it's
do.
like in a lot of that, not just my role, but like a lot of like professionals out there that are adults, like they hold their work close until they feel like it's perfect,
Hmm.
and they're not leading with curiosity, and they're not going to people early and saying, look at this feedback.
Right.
They're not okay with playing the fool, and so Ethan Hawke talked about this idea of like some of his roles early on in his career. He was like, I was so nervous, I didn't really know what to do on screen, but he just remembered something. I think one of his mentors or teacher, I could be saying this all wrong, but the message I got out of it was like, he didn't really excel in his work until he was okay bringing back that childlike mentality
Right.
of curiosity and playing the role of the fool,
That's good.
because that helped him be more curious about like who these characters were that he was portraying,
Hmm.
get feedback early before even getting on set,
Right.
and then ultimately like mastering his craft. And so when we think about my field as a learning designer, early on in my career, I was like so focused on this needs to be perfect. It needs to, and I think I said this in another episode that we did where it wasn't until a mentor told me, we're not striving for an A plus here. We just need a B plus,
Hmm.
because like the A will come after multiple iterations. And
Right.
so I connected that with this TED talk of just like, there's like this theme here of getting feedback early, being curious, and being okay with playing the fool,
Yeah, absolutely.
because that's what's going to make you better. And so I love that you're kind of thinking that same vein of just like learning from kids, even though they're like, you know,
Yeah,
8 years
absolutely.
old. There's
Yeah.
so much knowledge there, and so like it's like innocent, but also like naive, like like
Yes.
it's meant
Yeah.
to be, right? And and so maybe that's
Yeah. 100%. Yeah,
what
for
the lesson
sure.
is there.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, when I think about it in terms of like who we are to God, I mean, you're thinking about this being that has existed forever and has this ultimate knowledge, right? I'm not even as smart as a 5-year-old when you compare my knowledge to God's. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, definitely it's understanding that you don't have all the answers, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
So you mentioned that uh like in church, like I know church for being like a community.
Hmm.
And so curious like what how you feel community plays a role in how you teach and how you bring that element into how you approach like sharing this knowledge
I would say
with
it's
youth.
huge. I would say our community is a huge part. Think about it this way, right? There was a study that got put out, I forgot by who, but that said that every child that goes to church for an hour gets, for every hour they're in church, they get 17 hours of screen time, right? And you don't really look at their phone as a community, but that's where they're at most of the time. They're on their phones, they're doing these different things. So when the child's with me, for instance, and we're teaching them, I think the biggest difference between learning in the church versus learning in a school is I'm not here to discipline your child and tell them they're doing something wrong. I'm here to tell your child why we should do right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in school, it's sit down, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Where with us in the church, if you're being taught properly, the Bible's here to teach us why we should do good, why we should, help people. So the community that they end up being around, if your child is in the hallway doing something wrong, it's my job as your brother in Christ to show them why it's wrong, right? Versus the world, when people do something wrong, you see videos all the time of kids encouraging other kids to do wrong things, right? Or even adults sometimes, which is sad, but the community that they're around will for sure influence who that child is and vice versa. If that kid goes to church and they're the bad seed and they start influencing other kids, or adults, it's now you have this cycle. It's almost like a cold. You give it to one kid goes to school with a cold, everyone has it.
That's a really interesting concept. I don't know if I've ever like thought about it that way. So one of the many benefits that you get from exploring spirituality is like you're being taught that this is what good looks like, and this is like there's like positive reinforcement for
Mm-hmm.
being good versus like outside of church and in the world,
Cool.
right? We're taught this is what's wrong, and then this is the outcome of wrong.
Yeah.
So I bring this up because it's something like it just really hit me that there's this like shift in perspective about positive and negative influence,
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
positive influence, like let me show you like what's good, and then this is how like you're rewarded through community, through
Absolutely.
spirituality, through like a deeper connection with with yourself and your religion. And then on the other end, it's like you do one wrong thing, you're going to jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like like
Exactly.
you do this, you're grounded, and so you're kicked out of school, whatever. And so it's just like this constant negative feed into a child's mind. And so maybe that's also like why kids just naturally, when they're in that space of community and youth programs at church, it just feels lighter, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
feels like it
for
doesn't feel
sure.
so heavy. Yeah, so that's an interesting take for me, like a really big takeaway, just like perspective.
Mhm.
And so how you like communication, how you position something to the benefit or the penalty to
Mhm.
someone can drive motivation,
Yeah, not
right?
to, I mean, and it could also, I mean, think about what happens when you become teens, right? Or just children getting older in general, it's rebellion, right? So it's like, what can I get away with? Right? Like, okay, if I do
Not
this,
teens, my
yeah,
8-year-olds are.
right. But, and they start thinking about that. It's like, okay, what can I get away with? It's like, oh, I did this. Daddy said if I did this, then this would happen, but it didn't happen. I wonder if I can do it again. Right? Versus, when you start thinking about, okay, well, God sees everything and I should be doing this when no one's looking because God's always looking, or because I know that this is the right thing to do. Like, I want to be a better person. It drives out rebellion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's like, for me, that's the big takeaway from this if there's nothing else that I get out of this conversation, which I'm sure it will, it's that. It's a perspective and like that message, that positive versus negative influences is
Hmm.
really interesting and really drives like behavior.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good insight. So I want to stay here on this topic of community for a bit. And so obviously within your role, you're focused on influencing and promoting community. Have there ever been moments where you've just kind of taken a step back and you've seen teens like teaching each other things in
Oh,
that
man.
setting, or
Yeah.
how does that make you
Absolutely.
feel, and how does that drive you to continue doing what you're doing?
So I'm going to go even a step further.
Yeah, do it.
Teens,
Let's go deep.
I have had on several occasions, right? So at our church, every volunteer gets background checked. We do orientation. We sit down with them. We talk to them. We ask why. We don't just let anyone teach our children. I'm very strict, especially with military background. I've increased security. I mean, so I make sure that that whoever's in the classroom with the children has a good heart and, the good intentions. So I've had several parents come in and say, I'm sitting there and I'm asking them, why do you want to teach? What made you want to become a volunteer? And this has happened on several occasions. I can remember 3 instances for sure, 2 in which the ladies left crying and they walked in there. And when I asked them that question, they said, my 3-year-old got mad at me because we went to go eat dinner and we didn't pray first. She said, we never prayed at the table. She said, but she comes in here and she prays every week. My 3-year-old memorized Bible verses. She said, and I thought to myself, I don't know what they're doing, but I want to be a part of it. For my child to get upset that I'm not praying before I eat made me realize that maybe I should be upset that I'm not praying enough.
Yeah.
And you step back sometimes and it's like, I see what God is doing and it's not me. I take zero credit, but I see what he's allowed to happen through me and through the program and through the volunteers. And I'm just like, man, this is like the innocent part. And it's so pure. It's so pure. Cause I mean, for a child to start crying that mommy didn't pray before they ate, it's such a pure way of thinking about God And then we have, like I said, we have this program called Rush for the teens, and we have they're called Young Saints, right? So they go through this program, and they're mentored by the youth pastor for the teens. So there's the youth pastor, and then there's me, which is 12 and under, and I volunteer over there. They get mentored by them. They do discipleship together, and these kids come over, and we call them student leaders, and they'll teach in the classrooms, and it's awesome because this past week we had a Christmas party for all the volunteers, right? Well, volunteers have kids. Well, I think there was like 20 students that stepped up and they said, we'll take care of the children. We want the adults to enjoy the party. So, I mean, we were all in the same building,
Right.
but they took charge. They taught the kids, they played with them. And I mean, to be honest with you, they complained a little less than the adults sometimes, and they just, because the kids can relate to them.
Yeah.
So to see them teaching each other, to see them teaching the kids, it's like, it's still pure. Even, they're a little tainted because they're teens, but, but it's still,
No,
they're still
not teens.
pure.
I
So
remember
it's awesome, man. It really makes you sit back and say, wow, like, I'm glad that God put me here because I'm able to see this and I'm able to experience just like what God expects from us as adults, the heart,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's purpose for why you're there, and having that reminder is something that, it's really important to hold on to. It's really tough. I keep kind of coming back because a lot of these things that you're saying are just like, they're so relatable to me and what I do, because I was talking about this topic with somebody else, how in education, I feel sometimes like depending on where you work, whether you're in like a public school system, private school system, or higher education, or even corporate environments, like you go in with like this intention of like, I'm here to serve a purpose. I'm a servant to like those that I'm trying to teach and help shape. And sometimes that gets like, not to keep saying this word because, but it kind of gets beaten out of you as an adult. It's like you forget like your purpose, and the best thing you can do is put yourself in an environment where you're reminded of that purpose. And so, when you're thinking about like in corporate environments or the workplace, when you're thinking about like who to choose as the right employer, the right place that you want to spend the majority of your day, find a place where it's going to remind you of your purpose.
Yes.
And if you can find a company that allows you to work through a place of purpose, then all the other things don't matter, right? Because you're reminded like why you have that joy, why, and so then you're a vehicle for whatever that message is meant to be. Right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's cool. But I think you should take credit too. I know God is, very powerful, but I also think that people tend to share what they're excited about.
Yeah.
And so
I get that.
There are a ton of different ways to teach, right? It's like you could be a boring educator, and I've had those and through university programs and going through undergrad, and they're just like, oh, I'm here because you could tell it's like a job.
Yeah.
It's not like their purpose. But then when somebody is like lecturing you or teaching you in whatever way, and they're teaching through purpose,
It's
then
different. Yeah, it's
that's
different.
when you want to share things. And so, I try to bring that to my practice, even though I'm not the best public speaker. But when I'm really passionate about something, then I look for every opportunity to share that, because I could see the joy in the person who taught me that. That increased my energy and my like connection to the topic.
Yeah,
it made me want
absolutely.
to share that out. So take some credit too.
Yeah,
Here and there.
here and there, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think, and I will say this, it does take time sometimes. I will say that you can't go into something expecting to always know your purpose. And that's what we were talking about, off screen was, I didn't, you don't always know where you're going to be at. And sometimes just in terms of, religious teaching, it's just being obedient and trusting the process, and you kind of get to know your purpose. So for a while, man, I was doing when I teach the children, I teach the children, right? And what I realized here recently is, I need to start teaching the teachers as well. There's an overall outline, but I can't have all, I heard this the other day and it resonated with me. Is if you have all of this knowledge and you don't share it, you're greedy.
Yeah.
And you're selfish. Right. So for me to go to school and gain all this knowledge and for me to know all these things about theology and the Bible and to not share it means I'm selfish. What's the point of learning it? Right. If I take all this, so now I need to start training the trainers, so to speak, and not this is wrong, this is right. It's again, like you said, perspective. This is why we're doing it. Right. And it's like sometimes it's tough with children. It is because they like to push buttons.
Yeah. Not kids. And come hang out with my kids. They'll push all your buttons.
They like to push buttons. Yes. Yeah, they do. They like to push buttons. And sometimes you're tired, man. And sometimes you don't feel good or you got stinking allergies going on and they just want to push your buttons and today's not the day, but that doesn't matter. When you're around children, your feelings don't matter. Theirs do. And same thing like you were saying in the corporate world, you go to work and you're dealing with a client and you have a bad day. It's not your client's fault.
Yeah.
Right? How do I help this person and ignore what I'm feeling just for a few minutes?
Yeah. It's that mindset of like service, right? Like
Yeah.
I think regardless of what your job is, not yours specifically, but
Yeah,
whoever's out there,
of course.
regardless of the job, like there's always a service to provide. Whether if you're teaching, you're doing it in a way that's like you're there to be a servant to your students.
Absolutely.
And in growth and development. If you're, whatever the case is, so like having that mindset is really key. And I hear a lot of leaders like across different companies I work for. And like I listen to a lot of leadership podcasts and it's always like the servant leader, having that mindset. It's not about you. It's not about your growth and development. I mean, there's a place for that, but you're in a leadership role as with the purpose of serving your team. And
right.
So
it's funny you say that. Servant leaders is actually a really good book that I read, but the prime example was Jesus Christ himself. I mean, he's definitely our Lord and Savior, the leader for me, but he came to be a servant. He says, I came to serve, not be served. Right. And he led that, he came and led that example. And it's I mean, the first thing that we're called to do is to be there. The Bible says, love God. Second is love your neighbor, not yourself. Right. So we are, it's just in our nature to serve one another. Sadly, there's a lot of things out there that teach you to be selfish and worry about yourself first. So it's trying to help, at least for me, children to understand that you want to take care of yourself. Don't get me wrong. There's an unhealthy and a healthy way to serve people. But more importantly, knowing that we're here to help one another. That's what it's all about.
So how do you overcome that? Like if you have this external pressure from like whatever kids are hearing, whether it's through, social media platforms or the news or whatever. I don't know what kids watch these days, but I know what my kids watch. But how do you combat that that external pressure when kids come in and maybe teenagers and it's just like it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. How do you help them like change that mindset? How do you overcome that?
That's the answer to that is yes. But it's tough. But it goes back to community, like we were saying earlier. It is tough. Children, especially teens, they go to school, they have all these different peer pressures and they want to try new things. And it's really just educating them. I feel like I've gone to, obviously, I've gone to a lot of different churches and I'm grateful for the one I'm at now because we have no problem telling the truth and calling things for what it is. A spade is a spade, right? But I feel like especially as Christians, we've gotten kind of scared to say certain things because we don't want to offend people or, or anything like that. And it's like, okay, well, this is what we believe. It's not about offending. It's about, again, the perspective on why we're doing something, not just don't do it. Yeah. So it's really helping them understand, hey, like this is, drinking beer. I mean, getting drunk and with your friends and skipping school. Heck, you know that I was not always saved. I've been right there with the best of them, but it's really showing them, hey, like it may seem like fun, yeah, but what happens when the fun ends there?
Yeah.
Right? It's both. It's both the positive and the negative in that moment because they need to see, okay, this is why you want to do it this way, but there is consequences. Yeah. There's consequences and doing dumb things like riding your bike and jumping off big ramps. That's fun. And now you get arthritis, at 35. And
does that happen to you?
Bro. Yeah. I'm 37 now and I got arthritis in like 5 different places. It's crazy. But yeah, there's consequences. And the thing that is really important I would say this for teens is when we were teens, we didn't think about what happens next tomorrow, right? I like that I'm not so old because the kids kind of resonate with me and the young adults to let them know, like, I didn't care about the same things you didn't care about, right? But I'm here to tell you, just like your parents, just like our grandparents. Yeah, no one wants to hear it, but you guys record everything.
Yeah.
Right? Everything's on camera. When I did something stupid, the only reason people knew about it is because they were there with me or I told them. You guys do something dumb. 5 years from now, you want to get a job and your boss sees something you did dumb. You don't understand how much you're stepping on your own toes. Yeah. Right? The things that this generation does, the consequences are so much faster than when we did things. And that's really helping them to understand, like, you can't go out in the world and just do all these dumb things anymore. Or you shouldn't have done them anyway. But now it's what I saw this video the other day where this kid was in class. The teacher stepped out and he threw this pencil box behind him and his friend was recording. The principal has Instagram. Go figure. They all got in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's like you think it's funny, but you're stepping on your own toes. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it, Yeah. So it's difficult.
It's kind of funny. No, just kidding. I'm kidding. Do not do that, kids. Well, our time is coming up, but I want to ask you a question around, we talked a lot about like how my environment in work is maybe a little different than yours or, a lot of things that we can learn from you. But curious, like if you were to be asked to go into like a company, a workplace and give one teaching about how what you do can support people like me in my role and helping and educating others in the workplace. Like what's a tip? What's a tool that what's some advice you'd give?
I would really say not discouraging the why. And the reason I say that is, again, I'll give you for instance. If the policy is to make sure that door is always locked, and that's it. Someone asks why, and you say, because that's the policy. Make sure that door's locked. 9 times out of 10, the person will probably do it, not really care about it. But if you tell them, hey, that door needs to remain locked because last time we left it unlocked, someone came in and robbed this place. I guarantee you they will never leave that door unlocked. And the same thing goes for almost everything that we do. You see all these different things and people ask why and they get shut down. You're killing their curiosity. They're asking because they want to know. And when you feed into that, it motivates them. It's not just because I said so.
Right.
So, and that's something I definitely learned from the children.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful because right now, I mean, AI is kind of like the talk of the town for like everyone in the world right now. And so a lot of times we're asked in the workplace, like, well, why do I need to use this if I'm already like, exceeding expectations within my job? Like, So they want a clear answer because when AI is still relatively new to like most consumers like us,
Hmm.
and we notice that sometimes it's like it's not always right. You know, it's
Hmm.
typically not until you go through it and give it more information.
Right.
And so I think when people first start using it, they're like, well, this is not giving me right information. It's just wasting my time. Like, why do I need to use this?
Hmm.
And so rather than just saying, because we said so,
Yes.
you know, it's going to like show, like explain the benefits of it, explain the
Hmm.
why behind it. And so that's just an example
Yeah,
how that might
absolutely.
translate to my world, but that's super helpful. All right. So with that, I just want to thank you for being here because I felt like this conversation probably surfaced more insights for me and more understanding of the why than than most of the conversations I typically have. And this
Sure.
was like there's this deeper connection when you're an educator, regardless of the age group, like the emotion piece, you know, the community aspect of it, even like on a spiritual level in some cases, how that really connects to understanding who you're teaching, why you're teaching them, helping them understand that as well. And so I just want to thank you for all that knowledge that
Sure. Thank you for having
you
me.
just dropped on us over here. And so if you found this to be helpful and you want to see more content like this, you can find it at rickyratcliffe.com or you can find the Learning Playground podcast on Spotify. Until next time, peace.